You're drafting soon. So today I'm bringing you my top 50 overall rankings and tiers for fantasy football. If you like fantasy football, hit that like and subscribe button, as we did just recently launch a new channel here on the 4for4 fantasy football channel. We started off with our first player in this S tier. It's going to be Ja'Marr Chase. And Ja'Marr Chase last season, absolute game winner. Wide receiver 1 on a points per game basis with 23.7. Absolutely electric. If you had a Ja'Marr Chase on your squad, you had a really good shot of making the playoffs as long as you drafted some good players around him. Absolutely love Ja'Marr Chase heading into this year 5 with the Bengals. What do we see on the defensive side for the Bengals? Nothing good. So what we're going to be expecting is a lot of passes from Joe Burrow to T. Higgins to Ja'Marr Chase. A lot of people are excited about Chase Brown, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But I do have Ja'Marr Chase as my first overall player off the board. Don't think that's anything crazy for anybody. Now, next few guys in this tier, it's going to be Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, and Saquon Barkley. So I understand a lot of you guys play in some RB heavy leagues. Like, as much as the new wave is to be drafting wide receivers, these stud running backs at the top are still going to be going off in this top tier. So I absolutely love taking a shot on a Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Both really have RB1 overall upside in their range of outcomes. If you're looking over on the 4for4 composite ADP, you're going to see that Bijan Robinson is coming off the board as RB1, Saquon Barkley is coming off the board as RB2, and then RB3, player number 4, is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. So I have these guys just a little bit differently ranked. I think the real reason that I have Jahmyr Gibbs above Saquon Barkley is just, number one, because of age, and I think ultimate upside when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs, which I know we saw that ultimate upside from Saquon Barkley last season. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has a lot more receiving upside in his range of outcomes. And I understand he's competing in the backfield with David Montgomery, but last year, 52 receptions, same that he had his rookie season. I think we could be talking about Jahmyr Gibbs in that 70, 75, receiving range. I understand it's a little bit hard when you're doing projections, when you see Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, they get rid of Ben Johnson, but I still do want me a piece of Jahmyr Gibbs here in this elite level tier. We got CeeDee Lamb sliding in as my wide receiver 2, and him kind of being player number 4 here, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. I think that's all I have to say. We got the Justin Jefferson injury. We got Puka Nacua dealing with the Matthew Stafford injury. So that just kind of bumps up CeeDee Lamb, in my personal opinion, as that clear wide receiver 2 target. I think the days of getting CeeDee Lamb somewhere around the 106, 107, long gone. CeeDee Lamb's going to be a top 5 pick in most of your guys' redraft leagues. Like CeeDee Lamb here as my overall player 4. 5, Saquon Barkley, like I said. I don't think you can push him any lower, even though he did have a ton of touches, and seeing somebody repeat as the RB1 has not happened, I think, since like 2010. And so give me a shot on Saquon here. Like I said, even if I understand he might be the RB2, RB3, he's playing on a Philadelphia Eagles team that absolutely loves to run the ball. So I'll take Saquon Barkley here, kind of rounding out this S tier. So we move into the A tier, and I just kind of have the rest of the first round here in the A tier. We have Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Malik Nabers, Christian McCaffrey, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, and Devonta Adams. Starting it off here with Justin Jefferson, I think anybody and their mama would put Justin Jefferson above CeeDee Lamb if he was fully healthy. You're dealing with, the reports that he's going to be healthy by the time week 1 happens. But we also always hate to be drafting somebody, especially dealing with a hamstring issue heading into week 1, knowing sometimes how this could impact Justin Jefferson's overall ceiling this season. And so I think nice little value here. He might even go lower. I've seen in some underdog drafts and just some other drafts that I've been doing, seeing Justin Jefferson fall to like the 108, 109. So there's a chance that when you redraft league, if the news still isn't super great, that you're able to get Justin Jefferson a little bit later. But I do have Justin Jefferson here sliding as the beginning of this A tier. Now, player number 7, wide receiver 4 for me is going to be Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua is somebody that has never finished lower than wide receiver 6 in a season. And we're getting him kind of right about here, like right at his floor. Wide receiver 2 on a points per game basis last season, even though he only played in 11 games. Now, Davante Adams does get added to this wide receiver core. So I think a lot of people are going to say, hey, Caleb, a little bit worried about the target share for Puka Nacua. But let's not forget, coming out as a rookie out of BYU, not highly drafted, 159 targets next to Cooper Kupp. I think there's plenty of options, and there's plenty of targets to be had for both Davante Adams and Puka Nacua. If you actually look right now, the Rams are projected to be a top 5 passing team. The part that I do want to hit on is the fact that Matthew Stafford is dealing with his injury. I think a lot of us could easily push Puka Nacua higher if we had a little bit more of a resemblance of is Matthew Stafford going to be okay? Because if Matthew Stafford's not going to be okay, we're going to be a little bit worried about Puka Nacua going forward. And if you would like to use the 4for4 website and all of its resources. Use code YouTube to get 25% off the yearly plan. And the thing that I want to talk about with the 4for4 website is it absolutely helps you win championships. I have used the 4for4 site for the last few years, and the real reason that I joined the 4for4 family is because of how good their resources is. So if you like what you're hearing, talking about fantasy football and want to join a great community, use code YouTube and we'll get you that 25% off and we'll help you win some fantasy football championships in 2025. Next player we're going to be talking about is Malik Nabers for the New York Giants. And Malik Nabers sliding in here as a wide receiver 5. Got to feel very comfortable. Mr. Target Hog himself, Mr. coming onto the scene out of nowhere. You were drafting him in the 5th round of your redraft leagues, your standard home leagues last season. So absolutely love the fact that he finished as a wide receiver 6 on a points per game basis, but 170 targets, absolutely impressive. Overall wide receiver 2 on a target basis. Now we add in Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. We also add in Jackson Dart. So we're assuming that the quarterback position is going to be way better than last year. So if he were to fully remain healthy this season, we could see Malik Nabers absolutely skyrocket and be like a really crazy value that you're kind of getting in the back half of your redraft league. So I absolutely love Malik Nabers here. My next player in this tier, overall player 9, is going to be Christian McCaffrey. I understand last season let a lot of us down. You drafted Christian McCaffrey at the 101, the 102. Now we're getting a discount. Older running back for sure, but we've seen some of these elite level running backs, whether we're talking about Derrick Henry or even somebody similar to a Christian McCaffrey level talent like a LaDainian Tomlinson and or a Marshall Faulk, be able to exceed and really have great fantasy football value later on into their career. Like I said, last year, if you just take your last year out, 2023 and 2022, 21, 24 fantasy points per game. So I think when you get to this part of your draft in the back half of the first, yes, the risk is always there. You want to hit on your first round player, but if CMC has one of these seasons, if you could be a top 3, top 2 running back on a points per game basis, we could absolutely be seeing CMC being a value, especially considering the fact that who in the wide receiver core we're really worried about. We see no Deebo Samuel. You got George Kittle, Juwan Jennings battling, this contract negotiations. We see Ricky Pearsall still struggling through some injuries. So we're just assuming that Christian McCaffrey is going to be the focal point of this team. I think you got to love that in the back end of the first round. Overall player 10, wide receiver 6, going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think as we approach the season, I'm definitely going to be doing another update on these rankings. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown could easily slide up into like right behind Malik Nabers. I think you could maybe potentially see us push Puka Nacua down if we get some really bad Matthew Stafford news. The news right now is not great, but I think I'm not overreacting to the news just yet. Amon-Ra St. Brown, no Ben Johnson, still all the mouths to feed in that offense, but he is Mr. Consistent. So if you're sitting there at the wide receiver 10 or the overall player 10 spot, and you're able to get a wide receiver 6 for me, Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially in a full PPR porn format, I think we could be talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown getting up in, finishing the season as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 on a points per game basis. Now, overall player 11 still in this tier. It's going to be Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. And last year for the Texans was not great. We saw CJ Stroud kind of take a step back after that amazing rookie season. Wide receiver 8, though, even though it was less, 17.6 fantasy points per game. But if you guys do remember, absolutely came out of the gates insane through the first 4 weeks. 17.7 fantasy points week 1, 27.5 fantasy points in week 2, 12.6 fantasy points in week 3, but then in week 4, 33.1. And so if you were trying to compete with teams like a Ja'Marr Chase, Nico Collins was that dude through the first 4 games. And then we kind of saw that Houston Texans offense take a step back over the next few weeks. And, Nico Collins didn't end up finishing close to a points per game basis that Ja'Marr Chase did. But I think getting that guy in the back half of the first round, you got to feel good about. And then my last player in round 1 in this A tier, it is going to be Achane for the Miami Dolphins. And Mr. Devon, kind of his whole value, and this kind of talks about the whole Miami Dolphins offense, and this is what I hate about it, is it's tied to Tua Tagovailoa. And so if Devon can get some separation, can just continue to take another step. Wide RB6 on a points per game basis last season was 17.6. 17.3 the year before, but he only had 203 rushing attempts compared to the year before where only in 11 games he had 103 rushing attempts. Very similar total touchdowns. For me, he is an absolute game wrecker, a game winner. If you compare what kind of trajectory he was on when Tua was healthy, dude has top 2, top 3 points per game upside. if not the RB over 1 overall. And so I think taking a shot on a CMC and a Devon Achane, as much as these wide receivers are pretty appealing at the back half of the first round, I do want to be taking a shot on a guy like Devon, especially if I'm at the turn and I can get a Devon, and the guy we'll be talking about in a little bit feels really good about the overall ranking. So that is kind of my A tier. Now, my next guy in the B tier, it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars, wide receiver 8 coming off for me. And Jacksonville's an interesting situation with Trevor Lawrence coming back healthy. You got Travis Hunter being added into this equation. So some people are probably going to give the little bit of a discount. But if you compare Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Nabers last season, yes, it wasn't, Malik Nabers is going to get the nod in both targets and, points per game. But Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver 11 in his own right. And if you look at the back half of the season, dude was absolutely balling. 18 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points, 32, 28, 23 in those big playoff money weeks, week 15, week 16, week 17. If you had Brian Thomas Jr., and you probably got him, in the 7th, 8th, 9th round of your redraft league, he was absolutely winning you a league if he was on your roster. And so I want to be taking a shot on him, like I said, early part of the second round, even back half of the first, depending on how you want to go. I think Brian Thomas Jr. definitely has room to grow and go up, but you're kind of getting that value discount on him, just kind of based on the fact that a lot of people are going to be a little bit worried about Travis Hunter and seeing what Trevor Lawrence is able to do this year. Next player, it's going to be Ashton Jeanty, RB6 off the board, overall player 14 for me. And Ashton Jeanty, when you're looking at the Las Vegas Raiders, it's pretty much Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, and Ashton Jeanty. Now, Ashton Jeanty gets that top 6 draft capital in the NFL draft. Now, the thing with Ashton Jeanty is you're getting him, I don't want to say at a discount, but just a little bit better pricing for a rookie running back in that early part of the second round. So I want to take a shot on a guy that is going to be the foundation of a Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll offense. So give me him here as my overall player 14 in the B tier, RB6. Next player, overall player 15, it is going to be my RB7. It's going to be Derrick Henry. And Father Time has not caught up to Derrick Henry at all. And that is what we like to see. But when is it? Because inevitably it will, but Derrick Henry is just this different beast. RB4 on a fantasy points per game basis. And even if his metrics go down, he's still going to be playing in a Baltimore Ravens offense. And I guess that's my argument from a whole is even if somehow his metrics or his efficiency go down, he should still maintain that top tier fantasy football production. But I do want to highlight the fact that last year at age 30, he put up 5.9 yards per carry, which if you compare, 2023, 2022, honestly, it was his highest yards per carry since 2020. So this dude's an absolute animal, absolute monster, alien, whatever you want to kind of describe Derrick Henry. We haven't seen a guy like him. I'm almost saying he's like the running back LeBron James. Same thing as what we saw like an Emmitt Smith who had absolutely crazy stats till the end and lasted a lot longer than all these other running backs. I want to be taking a shot on Derrick Henry. So I think early part of the second round, you have to feel comfortable here in this tier. Next guy in this tier, it's going to be Drizzy Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons. Gets Michael Penix. He's got the ghost of Kyle Pitts still there. Darnell Mooney's dealing with a little bit of an injury. Wide receiver 13 on a points per game basis. But if you take a look at the last 3 games that he played with Michael Penix Jr., 10.9 fantasy points, 17.6, and then 40.7. And in those games, he had a ton, when I say targets, like a ton of targets, 8, 13, and 18. And if he kind of were able to extrapolate that over a whole season, we could be talking about Drizzy Drake London being a top 6 wide receiver in fantasy football. So I think being able to kind of draft him here, I know there's a lot of question marks around this Atlanta Falcons team. What is Michael Penix Jr. actually going to look like? Wide receiver 9, overall player 16, getting him in the second round. Got to feel comfortable about that. The next player on the board, it is going to be my first tight end off the board. It is going to be Brock Bowers for the Las Vegas Raiders. And Brock Bowers, well, he didn't have the most targets of a rookie last season because that went to Malik Nabers. He did have the receptions record with 112. And that goes for both wide receivers and tight ends all time. Dude was electric. Tight end 300 points per game basis with 15.5. And that's with him only having 5 receiving touchdowns. Geno Smith has talked about how he's been absolutely unguardable in practice. I understand we get burned a lot of times by taking a high-level tight end. We've seen like when you had to draft Travis Kelce in the first round, it didn't necessarily go to plan. But this year, I think you're getting an absolute bona fide wide receiver in your tight end spot. So I think overall player 17 is where I absolutely want to have Brock Bowers and have him be participating and getting drafted in my rankings. Now, at overall 18, this is going to be A.J. Brown, wide receiver 10 for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people are going to say, oh, A.J. Brown doesn't, not focal point of his team, getting a little bit older, about to be, age 28 season. I don't care. dude just puts up numbers. And last year, 13 games played, wasn't absolutely winning you a league, but wasn't losing you a league. Wide receiver 12 on a points per game basis, 16.7. And I just want to take a shot. I want to take a shot on AJ Brown here. Wide receiver 2 on a target share last year. If Jalen Hurts is looking anywhere, he's looking at AJ Brown. Saquon Barkley only helps AJ Brown because people are going to have to start stacking the box a little bit more. So I understand Eagles were a top 5 run team, so there's not a ton of passing volume. If he were to have more passing volume, a little bit more targets, we could be talking about AJ Brown, like from a talent perspective, should still be, in that same conversation with the Puka Nacua, with the Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I get all that. I just think it's pretty good value here in the second round. Overall player 19 is going to be Ladd McConkey. Mr. Ladd McConkey, sliding in as wide receiver 11, demolished his rookie season, exceeded expectations. People were getting Ladd McConkey in the 7th, in the 8th round. And I think this is a good reminder about, sometimes we had a good value on Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, or what we thought they would be. And then we saw Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd McConkey, who you could get later round wide receivers, absolutely emerge. So this year, just a little bit of a caveat, be taking a look at Travis Hunter, Tet McMillan, Emeka Ibuka, Luther Burden. Those are some guys that would be targeted a little bit late, even Jayden Higgins. But Ladd McConkey, when we're talking about him in this tier, wide receiver 16 on points per game basis with 15.1. All the Chargers did this offseason is kind of give him more support. We see Trey Harris get drafted in the 2nd. They bring in Najee Harris. They bring in Omarion Hampton. Nobody, though, that we're like threatened for Ladd McConkey about. I think if Ladd McConkey, who was pretty much unguardable at the end of last season, can just kind of take that next step, just continue to be that guy, we could be talking about Ladd McConkey. Absolutely loving him. And then the last guy in this tier, it's going to be Chase Brown, RB8 overall. And Chase Brown was a league winner. He was an absolute league winner. And I think the thing that was crazy, you were able to get Chase Brown in your underdog leagues, like in the middle of the 3rd, early part of the 3rd. But when we're talking like your redraft leagues, he's definitely going to be going in that 2nd range. RB14 on a points per game basis, 15.9. What people aren't realizing is we saw Zach Moss get cut. So it's really just the Chase Brown and the Taj Brooks show for the Cincinnati Bengals, which means it's almost all going to be on Chase Brown, who had an absolutely 65% snap share. So if we see that go up, we could absolutely be seeing him. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 70% snap share. And I think there's room to talk about Chase Brown having, top 7, top 6 RB overall upside. So I kind of want to be taking him in this tier. Now, moving on to the next tier, we're going to start it off with Bucky Irving, RB9 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And last year, RB19 on a points per game basis with 14.4. I think there's room for him to grow. 8 total touchdowns. He had a ton of rushing yards, only 47 receptions. And the thing that Bucky was known about was getting a ton of receptions. Rachaad White was sliding in some of those receptions last year, but I think Bucky just takes a next step in year 2. And I think he just puts Rachaad White in the dust. So I like some Bucky Irving here as my overall player 21. Next guy, it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. This Indianapolis Colts team could be one of the sneaky offenses of the NFL this season, specifically when we're talking about they add Tyler Warren in the draft. It's between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones for starters, so we're hoping for at least some competent quarterback play. You add in the fact that you got Adonai Mitchell, you got Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs. Like, it's not the best wide receiver core, but it's also not the worst. And so give me a shot. Just give me a shot. Let's not forget, last year, won some people some leagues at the end of the year. Only played in 14 games. RB7 on a points per game basis was 17.6. Like I said, I know his bill of health the last 3 seasons, 14, 10, 11 games. So he hasn't played a full, 17-game season. But let's not forget, the last time he played a full 17-game season, which was almost, 3.5 years ago, in 2021, he did put up an RB1 season. Now, this is now year, 6 in the NFL. So getting a little bit up there in age. Like I said, I typically like my running backs a little bit younger, under that age 26 season threshold, but we've seen a lot of these running backs be produced. Like we just literally mentioned Saquon Barkley, CMC, Derrick Henry. Age is just becoming a number for these running backs. And so I think Jonathan Taylor is a really good value here. Moving it on to the next tier of player, we have Josh Jacobs, Trey McBride, T. Higgins, JSN, Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr., Omarion Hampton, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. So let's start it off with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is somebody that the Packers love to run the ball, and they add Matthew Golden in the draft. There's talk of them wanting to give more targets to Tucker Kraft. Josh Jacobs, RB8 last season, had 301 rushing attempts, 1,300 yards, 36 receptions, 342 receiving yards, and 16 total touchdowns. when it comes to an overall snap share, RB17. Team run plays per game, though, the Green Bay Packers were RB5 overall. So I want to be taking a shot on Josh Jacobs. I like Josh Jacobs here in my ranking. Next guy is going to be Trey McBride. Like I said, and then tier before you got Brock Bowers. Trey McBride arguably is in that same tier of talent. And I think if you miss out on Trey McBride, I'm definitely going to be waiting on tight end this year. But I mean, it's just such a gap between Brock Bowers and Trey McBride and the rest of the field that can one of maybe these rookie tight ends catch up? We'll have to see. But Trey McBride, can he have a little bit more touchdown upside? Because, 3 touchdowns in 2023 when he was the tight end 8. And then last year when he made the jump to tight end 2, only 2 receiving touchdowns. So he really hasn't had a touchdown upside. Maybe if he had touchdown upside, we would be talking about Trey McBride being an absolute league winner, like somebody that should be drafted, in the early part of the second round, similar range as a Brock Bowers. But I think until that happens, I feel really good here with my ranking of Trey McBride. Kind of talking through these next few guys. T. Higgins had maybe one of the most healthy seasons that he's had in a while, where we're talking about him on a points per game basis as wide receiver 5. He still only played in 12 games, but he won some people some money. He won some people some championships. Absolutely electric game versus the Denver Broncos in week 17, where he put up 40.1 fantasy points. I was actually walking around Kings Island watching the game on my phone as T. Higgins just continued to moss Riley Moss, which was absolutely hilarious. So absolutely love T. Higgins going forward. Think it's appropriate ranking here. Next guy is going to be JSN. How is JSN going to be able to slide in next to Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp? I don't know how this offense is going to work. Some really good things from Torrey Holton, some really good things from Elijah Arroyo. Those are valid. I just think for me, a lot of people have his ceiling a lot higher than maybe I do. But I think he's a super solid wide receiver. You're sliding in kind of to this third round range, early part of the third round, taking to JSN, I don't think it's going to hurt. Next guy in this tier, like I said, is going to be Tyreek Hill. Last year, the ground absolutely fell out of Tyreek Hill, but he's a guy that I'm drafting. He's a guy that I am targeting in this early third round range because I do think the seasons of RB, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 are not that far removed. It's literally only 2-3 seasons ago. So last year, as much as in the 17 games, he only put up wide receiver 29 points per game numbers. It wasn't good. Definitely lost people leagues because you drafted him in the first round. I still want to be taking a shot on Tyreek Hill. Tua Tagovailoa, Achane, Tyreek Hill. Worst thing that's going to happen to Tyreek if he keeps kind of running and yapping his mouth. There's been some interesting quotes this offseason that they're going to trade him. But I doubt they're going to trade him because he's literally the most talented wide receiver they have. And if they have any hope of competing for the playoffs, they're definitely going to need Tyreek Hill there. Next guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. And yes, this is kind of a projection because we didn't see Marvin Harrison Jr. absolutely light the world on fire as a rookie level wide receiver. Wide receiver 39 on a points per game basis with 11.6, only 116 targets, but 62 receptions. I mean, this dude, 116 targets is not bad, but if you actually look at wide receiver 7 on deep targets, wide receiver 25 on red zone targets with only 14. If we talk about his target quality rating, he was wide receiver 66 with a 4.78. And honestly, the target accuracy was wide receiver 92 with a 5.8. So Kyler Murray just absolutely struggled to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball. There's been some, questionable tape that's come out of camp of him getting locked down by a Will Johnson or really struggling with separation. But I think a lot of it has more to do with the play calling and the situation that they put Marvin Harrison Jr. in. So I think if you're kind of sitting here in the third round, yes, I would take a Tyreek Hill above Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you're kind of here in the middle part of the third round, I'm totally cool to just fire away, take a shot on a Marvin Harrison Jr. because right now in the composite, overall, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a little lower than I have him. So he's overall player 37, wide receiver 17. I have him as my overall player 28, wide receiver 15. So I'm just a little bit more bullish on Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'll be taking a shot on him. Okay, overall player 29 here. It is going to be Omarion Hampton, RB12. And Omarion Hampton continues to kind of climb up my rankings as we get more and more news out of camp about Najee Harris not necessarily participating. Najee Harris kind of still dealing with this overall injury. So give me some Omarion Hampton here as my RB12. And then kind of rounding out this tier, we have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think taking a QB, especially if you're playing in a 4-point passing touchdown league, but even if it's a 6, it really doesn't change the fact that I want to still be drafting these guys pretty early on in this third round, back end of the third round. I think a lot of times you might have to take them a little bit earlier, but we saw kind of the wins above replacement. We saw them scoring 3 to 4 points per game difference between their quarterback counterparts. And while I look at that as, and you're like, hey, and you're in the third round, I can take another wide receiver in my flex, or I can be, bolstering my running back depth. I think sometimes just playing it, I say safe, like it's not even like a safe thing. Like they have ultimate level upside. I just think it gives you such a great floor that if you hit on some maybe of your sleeper picks or hit on some of your running backs later, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson here are super good. Okay, now moving it on to my next tier. I almost call this like my value picks with potential. We'll start it off with Breece Hall as my RB13, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 16, Davante Adams, Kyren Williams, Jayden Daniels, George Kittle, and Mike Evans. Okay, so if we're starting this off, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, what's going to be happening with this Jets offense as we see Aaron Glenn coming in? We see Mr. Tanner taking over as the offensive coordinator. Are they going to get Breece Hall involved? I know that there's all the rumors of, Isaiah Davis, Braylon Allen. What's going to be happening there? I still want to be taking a shot. Garrett Wilson as well. Mr. No other targets to really compete with. I want to be taking a shot on Garrett Wilson if I can get him here as like overall player 33, wide receiver 16. Davante Adams is somebody sliding in here as my overall player 34, my wide receiver 17, that I'm just a little bit concerned about. And the reason that I'm a little bit concerned about Davante Adams specifically is what's happening with Matthew Stafford. Because we saw Davante Adams just be absolutely, he wasn't like electric like he was, first time around with Aaron Rodgers when he joined the Jets from that trade. But wide receiver 9 on a points per game basis, it wasn't bad, 17.2. I think the worry with Davante Adams is this is year 32. He continues to get up there. Father time's still a thing. Drafting wide receivers over the age of 30 is always risky business. But going into a Sean McVay top 5 passing style offense, you'd have to be really excited for Davante Adams because there's a chance that maybe he's the alpha and Puka's the 2. Like I said, I don't think that's going to be the case. That's why I have Puka still way higher. But this ranking still, what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford? A little bit of the worry there. Overall 35, we got Kyren Williams sliding in, so same kind of thing. It's almost like the teammate kind of tier here for me. RB14, the biggest worry that I have for Kyren Williams is they do have, now they've drafted last season, round 3, Blake Corum. This season, round 4, Jarquez Hunter. And we saw last year Blake Corum just essentially be nothing. Like there should been no scare that Kyren Williams was going to get his cookies taken by Blake Corum. But I think Jarquez Hunter is a little bit different of a prospect, even though he's drafted one round later. This was a deeper running back class. I think in a normal class, we're talking about Jarquez Hunter probably in that early 3rd round range. And Kyren Williams, RB10 on a fantasy points per game basis last season. He had one more touchdown, more, rushing yards, was a lot healthier, played a lot more, but he didn't have the same level of fantasy football output that he had in 2023. I'm a little bit worried about Kyren Williams. I'm not going to lie. I think he's a really good option. I think there's ultimate level upside because we've seen that top tier level of upside, but there's also a ton of pass catchers around him. The Rams also drafted Terrence Ferguson. So I'm a little bit intrigued, especially if Matthew Stafford's going to miss any time. I don't think that bodes well for either Davante Adams and or Kyren Williams. Now, Jayden Daniels slides in right here as my QB3. If I'm going to take a top 3 QB, I'd prefer to get a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, but if it falls that way that I get a Jayden Daniels, I'd take him. Now, there's always the concern that maybe he regresses in year 2, kind of pulls a CJ Stroud. But I think the one thing that at least Jayden Daniels has that CJ Stroud didn't is just that rushing ability. And we see them add not only a strong left tackle in Laremy Tunsil, we see them add Deebo Samuel, even though Deebo Samuel kind of looks like with me with about 10 pounds overweight, maybe more like 15. Thank you guys. The camera angle is a little generous. I do think Jayden Daniels is the guy that I want to take. Our QB5 on a points per game basis with 21.5. He had a crazy completion percentage. Cliff Kingsbury was absolutely dialing him up. So I'll take a shot on him. Overall player 36, QB3. Next player, it's going to be George Kittle, tight end 3. And George Kittle is just the man of consistency. He's been probably the most consistent tight end over the last 3 seasons. Tight end 2, tight end 6, tight end 1 on a points per game basis. And getting the tight end 1 on a points per game basis, I really think the issue last year, like we said, Brock Bowers came on strong, but Travis Kelce kind of took a fall down. Mark Andrews took a fall down. Sam Laporta took a fall down. And so there wasn't like a ton of competition between George Kittle. He really just had to pass, Trey McBride, who also didn't have a ton of upside. And so I'm not as excited. Maybe I should push. Maybe George Kittle is the greatest value in the draft right now. I just think I'm worried about these pass catchers for the 49ers because I don't know what that's going to look like. The thing that always just sucks about George Kittle, he's such a good blocker that they don't use him as much as they should in the passing game. Next player on my list, wide receiver 30, it's going to be Mike Evans, wide receiver 18 for me. And every year I'm like, Mike Evans is undervalued. And then I undervalue him. Because he's never finished, like the last 2 seasons, been a wide receiver 10 on a points per game basis with 17.2, 16.6, Mr. 1,000, 10 touchdowns. Now there's a lot of hype coming out of camp that we have to be really excited about Emeka Buka. Chris Godwin's kind of recovering slow from the injury. Still, you still got Bucky Irving in the backfield. What's it going to look like without Liam Cohen this year? But still, the main pieces of this team are still intact. I want to give Mike Evans all the benefit of the doubt, but still, Father Time, same with Davante Adams, is going to catch up to Mike Evans at some point. And so I feel like I'm just being a little bit safe with this ranking, but I think if you're being honest to yourself, do you want the production of Mike Evans over the last 2 seasons or Garrett Wilson? I think most people are going to say Mike Evans. So there's a chance that I am way undervaluing Mike Evans. And as we kind of approach the draft and as we see him hopefully make it through all training camp and preseason healthy, that we end up moving Mike Evans up a little bit more. This next tier of players, I would like to call middle of the pack players that have upside. Number 1, it's going to be Alvin Kamara, RB15, overall player 39. Alvin Kamara has been great. I mean, absolutely great on a points per game basis when you've gotten him. Now, this is age 30 season. He's been RB5, RB3 over the last 2 seasons, but goodness gracious, if you've seen the reports coming out of camp when it comes to Tyler Shough, when it comes to Spencer Rattler, I think this offense is going to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL, like it kind of was last season. And I think we're just banking on the hope that Alvin Kamara will have a ton of receptions, a lot of checkdowns because they're not able to throw the ball down the field. Maybe this is me also undervaluing Alvin Kamara at this age, similar to what I just did with Mike Evans, but RB15 feels appropriate. Next guy on this list, Tet McMillan, wide receiver 19, highly drafted prospect to the Carolina Panthers. They picked him with pick 8 in the NFL draft. Kind of best comps are to Mike Evans and Drake London when it comes to a skill-based level. I think this is a shot that you get to take, similar to where you would take a shot on like a Malik Nabers last year. I'll be taking a shot on Tet McMillan if I need a wide receiver. Got to feel pretty good that the Carolina Panthers, we saw Bryce Young really start to emerge at the end of last season. I'll be taking a shot there. Next player, overall player 41 for me, it's going to be Jalen Hurts, QB4. And while Jalen Hurts is kind of no longer in that top 3 conversation, hey, the tush push didn't get banned. And so last year, QB6 on a points per game basis, I just think the floor is so solid. And last year, he actually had more rushing yards than he did in 2023. So I know it's hard to look back on that 25.6 points per game season that he had in 2022, where he put up 760 rushing yards, had, a little bit more passing touchdowns. We'll have to just see. With Saquon Barkley coming in, the running attack is definitely getting a little bit more efficient. They're not having to throw the ball as much because that offensive line is just absolutely so good. Such a good offensive line. Overall, player 42 for me, it's going to be Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 20. Couldn't really push him any lower, but the contract negotiations are definitely affected. We're a little bit worried about that overall value. If he were to get traded, like how do I rank him? So I think that in like the next update of rankings will be definitely interesting for me. But I mean, based on what he did last season, based on the fact that he still has Jayden Daniels, who I have as a top 3 QB in fantasy football, gotta love him there as overall player 42. At 43, we got Rashee Rice, who is definitely going to be getting suspended, most likely for about 4 games. Like I said, I am not a lawyer, but Rashee Rice, if you take him at this year 2 points per game level, he got injured in this 4th game where he put up 0, but he put up 29.1, 18.5, and 17.3 fantasy points through the first 3 weeks. Rashee Rice was wide receiver 7 on a points per game basis, and there was a chance that we were going to see even more amazing things as the season kind of rolled in. Right now on the composite ADP, Rashee Rice is all the way down at wide receiver 20, overall player 45. So the fact that I'm kind of sliding him in 2 spots higher, not as high in my wide receiver rankings, I like Rashee Rice. Overall player 44 for me is going to be DK Metcalf for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A little bit weird to say, but who the heck else is Aaron Rodgers going to throw the ball to? I'm not saying that Arthur Smith is going to have a good offense. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to win them more than 5 games because that's what we saw him do with the Jets. But hey, he doesn't have Garrett Wilson. He doesn't have Davante Adams out there. It's literally just Jonnu Smith and DK Metcalf. And apparently they are sharing a bathroom throughout training camp. So that has to be worthy of something. It's almost like the Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp eating breakfast a few years ago. We'll just say it's like the bathroom stash there for DK Metcalf. So wide receiver 22, got to feel good about it. And last guy in this tier, it's going to be James Cook, RB16. And as much as I am not, honestly, this is me saying it, I will not have a lot of James Cook. If he falls to this value, I definitely will. RB11 last season on a points per game basis, but he did have 18 total touchdowns. Is he going to have 18 total touchdowns again? I don't know. When you're playing with Josh Allen, there's always the chance that Josh Allen has way more touchdowns and that pulls off of James Cook's overall value. But I mean, there's really not a lot of great pass catching options. We saw Khalil Shakir just go down with a high ankle sprain. You still have Dalton Kincaid, who didn't really show out in year 2. We saw Keon Coleman not have the best rookie season. We see Amari Cooper get traded and kind of become dust. So what is this team going to look like? You got Elijah Moore, who gets traded in, which I'm not like super excited about. I think James Cook is still going to probably be the most reliable weapon here for the Buffalo Bills. Can we just get Josh Allen a freaking alpha level wide receiver? They haven't had one since Stephon Diggs left. But I got to feel good about him sliding in here as my overall player 45. Now, moving on to the next tier, we got Xavier Worthy, Kenneth Walker, Devonta Smith, Courtland Sutton, Trevion Henderson, which kind of wraps up my top 50, but I'll give you guys a few bonus players as well. Xavier Worthy, with the Rashee Rice suspension, we saw Xavier Worthy Xavier Worthy with the injury to Rashee Rice last season, we saw him actually come on late in the season, and now we get to see him without Rashee Rice through the first few weeks of the season. So I'm excited for him. I think anybody in a Patrick Mahomes level offense, Andy Reid, you got to be taking a shot on Xavier Worthy. Kenneth Walker, with this new regime, a lot has been said about Kenneth Walker kind of looking really good, looking way better than a Zach Charbonnet. The issue with Kenneth Walker has always been, are they going to give him the receptions? And the answer to that usually is no. And so there hasn't been ultimate level upside with the injury risk that he always does carry. So just did want to slide him in here as my overall player, RB17, 47. Devonta Smith, same thing, wide receiver 26. Devonta Smith's a good player. He's a good player. He's just playing in a passing attack next to A.J. Brown. He's the number 2, and they're not a high passing volume team. And so if we're going to be talking through, his snaps, his red zone targets, his deep target, like anything that gets you fantasy points as a wide receiver, it's not necessarily there. Now, he's very crafty. He does have a good yards per team pass attempt, but it's hard for me to put him any higher. He's more of like this wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 category. Like if he's my wide receiver number 2 on my team, I don't feel absolutely great about it. Just going to say it. Next guy's going to be Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 25 for the Denver Broncos. And Courtland Sutton slides in with Bo Nix last season, and we start to see magic start to happen with Sean Payton. What do they do this offseason? You would think they would bring in some more wide receiver competition, but no, they do not. And Courtland Sutton will probably end up with 135 to 140 targets this season if he remains healthy. But Courtland Sutton's another guy that I like, especially if Bo Nix can take that jump. They do have J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey in the backfield, and they brought in Evan Ingram, but I still like Courtland Sutton there. My overall player 50, it's going to be Trevion Henderson, RB18 for the New England Patriots. A little bit of concern with Ramondre Stevenson and, the other weapons in this offense. Trevion, he's a game breaker. And I think when you're taking shots on some of these rookie level running backs, we just talked about Omarion Hampton. We talked about Ashton Jeanty a little bit earlier, but Trevion Henderson's somebody that you can be taking a shot on a little bit later that has similar level upside to a guy like an Omarion Hampton. 4.43 40-yard dash. I almost call him like a light Jahmyr Gibbs. So we'll have to see how Mike Vrabel and this, Patriots team kind of takes and uses that. Last few players, like I said, I'll give you 5 more players. Overall player 51, I got Chuba Hubbard. 52, I got George Pickens. 53, I got Jameson Williams. 54, I got Rome Odunze, wide receiver 28. And then number 55, I do have Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter is somebody that I'm really excited about. I think if I was probably on the board, I'd probably take him as my overall player 50 now that I'm thinking about it. So we'll have to see in my next rankings video. But if you like fantasy football, hit that like and subscribe button as we are growing this new channel, wanting to provide the best content possible for you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.